He must marry all three princesses or let the planet that once raised him be devoured by its own forgotten past. We open in the churning dark of Lysara's underbelly, where ancient pipes hiss with steam and the ground itself pulses with the residual energy of the planet's dying heart. In a dim-lit tunnel, boots splash through mineral-rich sludge, and overhead the glowing veins of crystal flicker like failing nerves. Welcome to Lysara, the world where empires are buried alive beneath their own history. And right now, one of its heirs is about to die. Princess Neria ran royal insignias torn from her cloak hair, half loosed from its coronet braid. Three pursuers, mercenaries in Heliox armor, stalked her through the tunnels like wolves playing with their prey. They didn't shoot, yet. That would have been too merciful, and far too quiet. She took a corner too hard and slammed into something solid. That something grunted. A man stood in the corridor, cloaked in traveler's dust, broad-shouldered with a blade strapped to his back that didn't hum with plasma, it shimmered with quiet ancient defiance. "Step aside," one mercenary barked. The man tilted his head. "I said move." The man did move forward. What followed wasn't a fight. It was a demonstration. The sword slid from its scabbard like a whisper through silk. The light from the crystals turned cold blue as it caught the blade's surface. In two movements, one mercenary's weapon clattered uselessly to the ground, another staggered back with armor sheared across the chest, and the third was already on the floor, gasping like a landed fish. Then silence. The man turned to Neria. "You all right?" She stared, chest heaving. Who are you?" He scratched his chin as if deciding. "Rael, a wanderer." "Let's go with that." The corridor echoed with distant boots. More would come. Neria took a breath. Then Rael. "You're going to marry me." He blinked. "Sorry what you drew, Aethor." She pointed at the sword. "And saved the heir to Lysara's crystal throne. According to royal law, you've invoked the right of binding." Rael glanced at the sword. "Aethor. Yes. That weapon hasn't been seen in 2 centuries. You've just triggered every succession protocol in our culture." "Damn." They moved side by side now through the lower corridors. Neria limped slightly and he offered a shoulder. She refused twice, then relented. "Why were they after you?" he asked. "Heliox, the tech conglomerate. They've been embedding agents into the royal staff for years, waiting for a moment of fracture. And now they think they've won." Rael didn't reply. He was trying to ignore how the sword vibrated against his back. Not a tremble of danger, but like... It recognized her. They reached a rusted hatch. Beyond it, the deeper levels of Lysara Prime. She placed a crystal chip to the lock, and the door slid open with a shudder. He hesitated. "You're free to walk," she said. "You don't owe me anything." But the sword hummed. Rael sighed. "I hate politics," Neria smirked. "You'll really hate marriage." Behind them, one of the fallen mercs twitched. As Rael turned, the man raised a plasma pistol, but before he could fire, Aethor moved on its own, launching from Rael's back like a thrown star. It pierced clean through the attacker's chest and returned to Rael's hand without a whisper. Both stood in stunned silence. "Okay," Rael muttered. "That's new." Neria's eyes widened. "It chose you." The blade pulsed once, like a heartbeat. Later, as they made their way through the quiet layers of the palace understructure, Neria explained more. Lysara's royal family was fracturing. The queen, her mother, was dead. That left the daughters. 3 of them. Neria the reformist, Selene the warrior, and Leora the seer. "None of us alone can claim the throne without war," she said. "And marrying me solves that? No. But it triggers the old right. If one outsider chosen by Aethor binds with all heirs, the throne stabilizes under a covenant consort." "You planned this?" he asked. She laughed bitterly. "Do you think I asked to be attacked today?" Rael glanced sideways. "And the other 2? They'll just go along with this." "No," she said. "But Selene will test you, and Leora already knows." Just then Rael felt something stir in the air, a pressure in his skull like a dream knocking on the wrong door. The sword tingled in his grip. Then a whisper. "She speaks the truth, Rael." His fingers clenched. The sword had just spoken. Out loud. A deep voice. A calm voice. But ancient. like it remembered empires. Did you, he started? Neria nodded slowly. Yes, Aethor guides, but only when it finds a soul worth waking for. Rael's knees buckled slightly. Oh, he muttered, I am going to regret this. But the princess just smiled. No, you're going to save us. Rael did not sleep that night. In the quarters hastily prepared for him, deep beneath Lysara Prime's outer dome, surrounded by silent palace guards who never met his eye, he sat upright, the Aethor sword propped against a chair, like an old friend suddenly speaking in riddles. He stared at it. The blade pulsed faintly. Not light memory. You've got a sense of humor, Rael muttered. Choosing me. The sword mercifully didn't answer. Not with words, at least. But Rael could feel something under the surface. A rhythm, a presence. Not quite sentient, more like witnessing. The door creaked open without warning. A woman entered. She was tall, clad in ceremonial armor, trimmed with crystal veins, her crimson cloak worn like a challenge rather than a formality. Her face was stern, her eyes even more so. You're the one, she said flatly. The blade chose you, Rael stood. Depends. Who's asking Selene? Second heir of Lysara, defender of the Eastern Vault. And if you're the man who just married my sister through some forgotten sword law, then I get a say? Rael raised an eyebrow. Say in what? Whether you live long enough to regret it. She stepped closer, eyes narrowing. You wielded Aethor. Then you must pass the binding trial. Rael blinked. I thought I was done with sword fights for at least one day. No, she said. This isn't combat. It's the right of testimony. Lysaran law says you must face the fire, not to prove strength, but intent. And if I refuse, Selene drew a small ceremonial blade and tapped it against her bracer. You won't, she said. Rael sighed. Why does every royalty I meet want to kill me or marry me? Same thing on this planet. They descended into the vault, a chamber carved directly from the planet's crystal heart. The walls shimmered with encoded glyphs, shifting with ancient record-keeping light. Here monarchs were judged not by court or war, but by the echoes of those who came before. Selene turned to him. Stand on the sigil. Aethor will do the rest. Rael stepped into the circle. Nothing happened then, everything did. The room dimmed. Symbols lit up around him like a constellation. The sword in his hand surged with pressure, and suddenly Rael was somewhere else. A desert, a battlefield, a sky of fire. He stood amid the ghosts of a memory not his own. You would bind with the royal blood, a voice boomed, an echo without origin. Rael swallowed. Look, this wasn't my plan. I saved a girl from being stabbed, and now I'm apparently a political solution. And yet the voice continued, you carry the blade. You have tasted its rhythm. You heard its whisper. A figure stepped from the smoke. A woman tall, cloaked her hair tied in silver rings. Her eyes, familiar. Do you know me, boy? She asked. No, Rael replied. But I think the sword does. She smiled gently. I am Lysara. Rael's breath caught. Not the planet, she continued. The Empress. The one who raised you before memory failed you. The sky cracked. Rael saw flashes, a child alone in the ruins. A woman kneeling, lifting him. A sword placed in his tiny hands. I don't remember. You will, she said. Aethor remembers you. The battlefield faded. The circle dimmed. Rael stumbled forward back in the vault. Selene stood arms crossed, watching. You passed, she said. Didn't do anything. You stood there, she said. That's more than most. He shook his head, still reeling. Your mother. I saw her. She said, she raised me. Selene frowned. That would explain the royal markings. You have one on your shoulder. Rael instinctively touched his collarbone. Beneath the skin, something metallic. Ancient. Burned in as a child. So I'm what a lost prince, no, Selene said. You're a weapon. Raised for a purpose. Then buried. Until now. Rael slumped against the wall. I miss the days when being a wandering swordsman just meant drinking bad tea and punching bandits. A voice echoed from the doorway. You were never just a wanderer. Leora stepped into view. She was younger than her sisters. Wrapped in midnight fabrics and glass thread veils, her eyes shimmered like starlight seen underwater. She didn't walk, she glided as if gravity was a mild suggestion. Rael blinked. And you must be the clairvoyant. Clairvoyance is a myth, Leora said. I only read what time has already told us. You, Rael, are written in more futures than I can count. And how many do I die? Leora smiled faintly. All of them. But that's not the interesting part. She stepped close, too close. Rael tensed. Leora reached out, brushing his chest. You've been stitched into the fate of this planet like thread through flesh. Aethor sings because you're the last voice it remembers hearing. Even before the fire, before the attack. Rael tried to back away, but the room swayed. Too much truth, too fast. You are the last son of the Empress, Leora whispered, and the galaxy is about to remember why that matters. Selene stepped forward. We're not ready for war. We don't need to be, Leora said, because we have him now. A pause. Then Aethor glowed, and somewhere distant, so far even memory had tried to forget it, a signal pulsed into the void. Heliox had felt it, and they would come. They came at dusk. A subtle tremor rippled through the lower vaults of Lysara Prime, like the sigh of a giant waking under stone. Rael stood at the edge of a crystalline overlook, staring into the memory lake. It shimmered with bioluminescent threads, each one a strand of Lysaran history memory made fluid. Behind him, Selene armed herself in silence. Crystal-forged gauntlets clicked into place over her forearms, her breastplate locking down with a sound like thunder muffled by silk. They're moving, she said without turning. Heliox Rael asked, not moving his gaze. Agents, probably internal. The Royal Guard's command structure cracked in 4 directions as soon as word spread that Aethor had chosen someone. Half of them think you're a usurper, and the other half, fanatics. She grunted, adjusting her sword belt. They'd follow you into hell, might even ask for souvenirs. Rael finally turned. And what about you? Selene didn't blink. I'm still deciding. Footsteps approached. Neria arrived cloaked not in royal dress, but field armor light, reinforced, built for mobility in subterranean battle. Her crown had been reduced to a thin diadem, symbolic yes, but it shimmered with active shielding tech. Leora was already present when, had she arrived, no one had seen her enter. She sat cross-legged on a hovering platform, eyes closed-mouthed, whispering things not yet said. Rael stared at them, these 3 women, royal blood bound by duty and danger, and him an amnesiac swordsman wielding a talking blade with a past he didn't ask for. A better man would have run, but he wasn't that lucky anymore. The vault rumbled. Sirens bloomed through the crystal network. Aethor vibrated. They're breaching the twilight wing, a guard barked, sprinting past. Neria turned to Rael. That's where the relics are kept. If Heliox gets to the core keys, they can override the palace failsafes. Selene grabbed her helmet. Then we meet them there. They ran. Down the hallways lined with ghost steel statues. Through automated gates already failing. Past murals that shimmered with ancestor memories, watching silently as their descendants dashed toward the teeth of rebellion. The Twilight Wing was a cathedral built into the side of a geothermal rift. 100 meters tall, held aloft by gravitational anchors and lined with plasma-etched memorials. It was on fire. Figures in Heliox stealth armor, black and flickering, like glitching shadows, crawled along the walls and ceiling, firing bolt casters into defenders below. Palace guards returned fire from cover, but it was clear they were losing. Rael didn't hesitate. Aethor leapt into his handblade, gleaming with pale light. He jumped, fell 2 stories straight down into the fray. The sword whispered, rightward swing, deflect, elbow, knee, roll. Rael obeyed. The first Heliox agent never saw the strike coming. The second managed to scream before his weapon flew from his hand. The third Rael caught mid-lunge, kicked her into the memorial basin, and she vanished in a burst of cryofoam. A princess landed beside him, Selene. She wielded twin sabers with dancer's grace and predator's instinct. Each movement was calculated fury, a tactical ballet of tradition and death. You've got form, she said between strikes. You've got blood on your eyebrow, Rael replied. Not mine. Neria came from above, gliding on repulsor boots. She landed behind a fallen pillar and began coordinating fire patterns with the remaining guards. Leora arrived last. She didn't fight. She didn't have to. With a single whisper, she changed the battlefield. One agent turned and fired at nothing, his visor filled with illusions. Another dropped her weapon, trembling, mumbling something about fire coming from inside her own veins. A third ran right off the edge of the memorial platform. Rael caught sight of Lyora's eyes lit with a soft, eerie glow. "What are you doing to them?" he shouted. "I'm not," she whispered back. "They're remembering things that haven't happened yet." Rael spun just in time to parry a vibro knife aimed at his spine. He caught the attacker's wrist twisted and let Aethor finish the story. The last Heliox soldier fell. Silence returned. For a moment. Then the Twilight Palace's inner chamber groaned open. A new figure stepped out. Black robes. No visible armor. Eyes augmented by golden lenses. Voice calm, precise. "Ah," he said. "So the boy survived." Rael stepped forward, blade ready. "Who the hell are you?" The figure tilted his head. "Project Lysara classified designation. Aethor Custodian Alpha. Your old guardian Rael." Neria tensed. "Impossible." "No," the figure said. "Regrettable." He raised a palm. The ground beneath Rael shimmered and turned to mist. Rael dropped through. The last thing he saw was Lyora reaching for him, eyes wide, not with fear, but recognition. "Let him fall," the custodian said softly. "He must see." Darkness swallowed Rael. The air warped. Time stretched. He landed with a crash, not on stone, but on memory. Aethor did not hum. It sang. Rael floated not in water, not in air, but in something more insidious, time. He drifted amid flickering images projected around him like ghosts caught between dreams. Faces passed blurred, distorted yet familiar. A child clinging to the hem of an imperial robe. A hand reaching down. A voice low, warm, fierce, saying, "Your name is Rael. Not because you were born to it, but because you earned it." He stumbled forward. The floor reassembled beneath him, hexagonal crystal tiles layered over ancient data conduits. A circular chamber spun into being, domed and immense like a memory fortress suspended in the folds of history. "Where am I?" Rael muttered. "In the Archivum," came a voice. Aethor floated beside him, now suspended midair, blade down point, resting just above the floor, as if respecting sacred ground. Rael turned to the speaker. It was the same man, black-robed, golden-eyed, the custodian from before. Only this time his voice had lost its edge of superiority. Here it rang with sadness. "You're in the heart of the sword," the custodian said. "Inside the records embedded within Aethor. You triggered a fail-safe, something only the blood mark can access." Rael looked down at his hand. The old scar on his knuckle, one he couldn't recall getting, now glowed faintly. "You mean this is all inside the sword?" "Yes. The blade is more than a weapon. It is the archive of Lysara's truths, and a prison for its lies." The chamber dimmed, then erupted into an image. A war, a planet burning, children screaming, and at the center Rael, younger, bloodied, crying beside a woman's lifeless body. "That's me," the custodian nodded. "The day Heliox came, the day the Empress died protecting you, you were her final directive." Rael turned away. "I don't remember any of it." "You weren't supposed to," the custodian said. "The Empress ordered your memory sealed, to protect you from them, and from yourself." Images changed. Rael as a boy sparring with holograms. Rael listening to the Empress recount the ancient laws. Rael walking barefoot across the crystalline lake at night, the sword smaller than beside him like a companion dog. "She raised me," Rael said quietly. "She loved you," the custodian replied. "As her own." The sword chimed a low, sympathetic tone. "But why now?" Rael asked. "Why bring all this back?" Because the custodian replied, stepping into the flickering vision Heliox never left. They merely evolved. They infiltrated our systems, corrupted our cores, and now they plan to harvest Lysara's memory lake as a data mine. Not for energy, for control. Rael clenched his fists. "You have to stop them," the custodian said. "As her heir, as the blade's bearer." Rael shook his head. "I'm not a king. I'm not even sure I'm a decent person." "No," the custodian said, "you're something rarer. You're a choice." The sword didn't pick a politician. It picked a fighter, a survivor. A new image formed. A throne fractured. Beside it, Neria, Selene, and Leora stood surrounded by fire and smoke. Heliox agents closed in a dark tide of faceless soldiers and mechanized horrors. "They'll come for the sisters," the custodian whispered, "unless you return." Rael stared at the vision. No pressure, right? The sword drifted into his hand. The world around him began to dissolve. "Tell me something," Rael said. "Yes, if Aethor is a memory keeper, then does it remember how to win?" The custodian smiled faintly. "It remembers everything." Light enveloped Rael, and then he was falling upward. He landed hard on the marble floor of the royal sanctum Aethor, in hand, eyes blazing. Selene turned wounded, but standing, one arm dripping blood. "Nice of you to drop in," she grunted, parrying a strike from a Heliox brute in mech plate. Neria was directing troops from behind a makeshift barricade. Lyra knelt at a console, fingers moving like she was weaving stars. "You're late," she said without looking. "I got lost in time," Rael replied. "Turns out it's bigger on the inside." He leapt into the fray. Aethor burned bright like it remembered what it was forged to do. Rael moved like lightning through molasses, precise, brutal, unrelenting. The sword didn't just guide him, it predicted. Showed him echoes of enemy strikes before they happened. An arm here, a pulse rifle there, a weak point glowing with intimate regret. He moved through Heliox like a rumor no one wanted to believe, until finally, they stopped coming. Smoke lingered, debris settled. Rael knelt beside Selene. "You good? I've had worse," she said, "though I don't remember falling through a sword before." He turned to Neria. She looked at him not with awe, but with grim relief. "You remember now enough," she nodded. "Then we move. We have one shot at this." Rael looked to Leora. She nodded slowly. "The council is watching. The stars are aligning." And Rael, still catching his breath, realized something terrifying. He wasn't running anymore. He was standing. For something. The next morning dawned underground, as it always did on Lysara, through calibrated skylight panels and artificial sun simulators, tuned to replicate the gentle hues of a pre-collapsed surface era. But today those lights flickered. The palace's environmental systems were overburdened, trying to compensate for the damage from last night's siege. Rael sat alone in the grand refectory, a hall once reserved for coronation feasts and alliance treaties. Now it was filled with wounded soldiers, exhausted nobles, and hastily patched-together terminals, spewing out crisis alerts. He stirred a mug of bitter root tea, staring into its swirling sediment like it held answers. Aethor leaned against the table, inert for now. "You didn't sleep," came a voice. He looked up. Neria stood there, her armor exchanged for a regal uniform of crystalline fiber and flowing lapis silk. But her eyes, they hadn't softened. "Wasn't tired," Rael said. She sat across from him. "That's not the same as resting." "Didn't think I had the right." Neria tilted her head. "You carry Aethor. You're heir to truths, even though I wasn't allowed to read. I think you've earned the right to close your eyes." Rael smirked. "Every time I close my eyes, I remember more. Not just facts, feelings, places." The way her voice cracked when she laughed. "The scent of ironwood trees in the Empress's garden. The night I fell asleep on her throne because I thought it was just a big chair." Neria's hand twitched, almost reached for his, but stopped. "She loved you," she whispered. Rael nodded. "And she died keeping me safe." They sat in silence, surrounded by the murmurs of a palace, trying to hold itself together. Then a new sound, a voice over the palace intercom. "Attention, royal delegates assemble in War Room 12. Emergency session authorized by House Triumvirate." "That's us," Neria said, already rising. Rael groaned. "Do I have to wear something uncomfortable only if you want the council to take you seriously?" "Then I'll wear 2 jackets." War Room 12 was part of the older structures of the Twilight Palace pre-Empress era. Stone walls reinforced with archaic runes, steel tables bolted into the foundation. Around the central table stood a strange congregation, the 3 princesses, their advisors, remaining loyal guards, and Rael. Selene stood posture stiff. "We intercepted this an hour ago." She tapped a glyph. A hologram ignited in the air and intercepted Heliox transmission. The voice was synthetic, clinical. "Operation Phase Theta initiated. Detonation protocol for core vault set in 40 standard hours. Objective: eliminate residual royal lines, secure crystal neural substrate, Prepare for atmospheric extraction. Rael felt a chill. They're going to blow up the memory lake. Neria's face hardened. That would kill every living record of our past. And send the energy reserves into cascading collapse, Selene added. The palace would fall into the rift. Rael looked to Leora. You already saw this, didn't you? She nodded, eyes distant. But I didn't see what you'd do next. That part's still shifting. Rael paced. Then we have to move fast. If they detonate the core, we lose more than the city, we lose who we are. An aide cleared their throat nervously. With respect, my lords and ladies and consort. Rael blinked. Are people actually calling me that now? We don't have the military numbers to stop a full Heliox retrieval squad. Selene cracked her knuckles. Then we fight like they expect us to surrender and surprise them. Rael turned to Neria. How far can you broadcast with the old lattice? Nyria glanced at her engineers. Planet-wide if we can reboot the antenna arrays. Why? Because it's time we told Lysara the truth. About Heliox. About the sword. About me. Lyra stood. He's right. Selene arched her brow. You just agreed with someone. I do that once a cycle. Rael approached the main console. Give me the mic, and if I ramble, just cut me off. The transmission went live 10 minutes later. Rael stood in front of an ancient mosaic screen, the Aethor sword gleaming on his back. Across Lysara, in underground districts, mining outposts and sky station observatories, citizens paused as their displays flickered and tuned in. Rael spoke. My name is Rael. I carry the sword Aethor, an artifact of the First Empress. And 15 years ago, I lost everything, including my memory, during a Heliox incursion. I was a child then. I survived because someone sacrificed everything to protect me. He looked down. But I'm not here to tell you about loss. I'm here to talk about what we still have. Lysara is not just a world, it's a library, a sanctuary, a history written in crystal and flame. And now it's under siege by those who would erase that history for profit. He leaned closer. We fight not for power, but for memory, for the truth that binds us. And I'm not asking for loyalty. I'm asking for resistance, wherever you are, however you can stand. He ended the broadcast. The room was quiet. Then Selene let out a low whistle. Well, you're not bad at speeches. Rael exhaled. I used to talk to myself a lot. Same vibe. Lyra turned eyes wide. It's begun, she said. What has the choice? Above the palace, far above the layers of concrete and history, Lysara's sky began to darken, not from clouds, but from something else. Ships, dozens of them. Heliox had arrived. The first ship pierced the artificial sky like a blade sliding into soft fabric. It wasn't the biggest nor the loudest, but it was the message. Sleek black, framed in rippling plasma distortion fields, it hovered above the central dome of Lysara Prime, with the confidence of something that believed itself inevitable. Rael stared at the display in the war room. Tell me that's a diplomatic envoy. It's a gunship, Neria said flatly. They're not negotiating. Selene slid her twin sabers onto her back. Then we give them a welcome they won't forget. Lyra stood at the console, her hands dancing across touch runes. They're deploying nanodrones into the upper corridors. Recon first, then shock troops. And if they breach the memory lake, Rael asked. We lose everything, she whispered. A pulse of light flickered across the room's ceiling. The alert turned crimson. Security breach. Eastern Hall. Multiple intrusions. Rael tightened his grip on Aethor. Then we don't wait for them to reach the throne room. He turned to Selene. Split the guard. Lock down the core vault with full shield harmonics. To do that, she said, I'll have to override royal protocols. You are royal, not without a crown. Rael grinned. Borrow mine. He turned to Neria. Can we get power to the elevator shafts? I want those ships closed in when they try to descend. She nodded. Do you have a plan? Something reckless, he muttered, which around here seems to be synonymous with human. The palace's eastern wing was a web of shattered corridors and collapsed archival towers, once a bastion of scholarly pride, now a battlefield. Rael and his team moved through it like whispers behind enemy lines. The Heliox operatives weren't just soldiers. They moved like algorithms in flesh-synchronized, seamless, without wasted motion. Black visors scanned through walls. Their rifles had no muzzles, just prongs that sang when they fired. And Rael. He ran at them anyway. Aethor cut through armor like it was held together by memory and string. The sword emitted small, vibrating pulses that disrupted Heliox tech, a built-in EMP that only activated when wielded by someone with the Empress's blood mark. Left flank, Selene barked, vaulting over a fallen beam to land on one enemy with a kick that crumpled steel. Rael spun, deflected a plasma blade, twisted and impaled the attacker through his suit's command relay. Lysara, he called, "How's our future looking?" Lyora's voice came through their comms, calm and serene. "Branching. 1,000 paths. Most of them are bad. Comforting. But one leads to survival. If you reach the dome relay in the next 6 minutes." Rael turned, Neria already moving. The team ascended through the palace's vertical shaft, now more of a war tunnel. Lights flickered. Distant booms echoed from deeper halls. Rael looked back, once foresaw a young palace guard, barely older than 20, bleeding from a leg wound but still covering their retreat. He gave the kid a nod. The kid nodded back, terrified but proud. They reached the dome relay, a circular structure built at the palace's apex. It was designed centuries ago to amplify royal commands across the planetary grid. Rael approached the command pillar. "Tell me this still works." Neria was already plugging in a crystal key. It should. "The system routes through the Twilight Palace's neural lattice. We can lock the airspace for 12 minutes, just long enough to make a mess." As the system hummed to life, Rael placed a palm against the control panel. Aethor glowed. And then, the sword spoke. Not in words, in memory. Rael's mind is filled with a vision, not a past, but a warning. A Heliox dreadnought buried beneath the crust of Lysara. Not in orbit. Already here. "Underground," he whispered. "They seeded the core. They've been here longer than we thought." Selene narrowed her eyes. "You mean they built a ship inside our planet?" "No," Rael said. "They woke one up." The console lit red. Lyora's voice crackled through. "They're activating the failsafe. They'll collapse the palace and ignite the vault in under an hour. Then we fight here," Selene said, standing tall. "No," Rael replied slowly, deliberately. "We take the fight to them." He turned to the relay. "Neria, can this thing transmit through the vault's old pulse channels?" "Yes, but they haven't been used since the Empress's time. They were only meant for high-frequency command pings." "Then we use them," Rael said. For what Rael looked at Aethor. The sword gleamed in his reflection, and something inside the blade, the memory, the will, answered, to call the ones who still remember. Neria stepped back. "Are you suggesting—" "Yes," Rael said, eyes hardening. "There are still loyalists out there, veterans of the first Empress's court, hidden, waiting. If we send a proper signal, they'll answer." Lyora's voice came again. "If you send that ping, you don't just wake allies. You wake the deep protocols. You risk waking the force that even Lysara buried." Rael glanced at the sword. "I'm done running from ghosts." He pressed his hand to the control. The signal pulsed, and across Lysara, deep in hidden bunkers, long sealed tunnels, and memory-synced outposts, old soldiers opened their eyes. The Empress's guard was coming home. It began with vibrations, not from the approaching Heliox dreadnought pulsing beneath Lysara's crust, but from deeper, older chambers where the stone itself had forgotten time. Long-buried vaults hummed as forgotten mechanisms shivered back to life. In every corner of the planet, veterans stirred ancient armor, hissed open, and encrypted tattoos blinked awake on scarred skin. The Empress's guard, codenamed the Crownless, had heard the call, and Rael stood at the center of it. Back in the sanctum, the sword Aethor pulsed so hard his hand trembled. Each heartbeat was a transmission, a summons. Around him, glyphs of the old language flared to life across walls untouched for generations. In those symbols, Rael read names dozens, hundreds. Soldiers of the throne hidden like seeds waiting for spring. Selene stared at the glyphs in awe. "I thought they were myths." Neria, arms crossed, breathed. "I thought they were extinct." Lysara simply said, "They're not coming for you." Rael blinked. "What, they're coming for her?" Lysara nodded toward Aethor. The sword was the Empress's final command node, a living key to the old command chain. You're the hand that wields her last words. From the vault doors came a dull thud. Then another. Heliox was done playing politics. The shield holding the core vault was starting to buckle. Rael turned to Neria. Get your guards to seal the upper corridors. Collapse them if necessary. To trap us in, to trap them out long enough. She hesitated, then nodded and ran. Selene grunted, pulling her sabers free. I'm staying. Rael looked at her. You sure someone has to keep your reckless self from dying dramatically? Lysara placed her hand on the crystal console, her voice distant. They're tunneling from 3 angles. We have 23 minutes before full breach. Rael looked around. A ruined palace. 3 princesses, 1 sword, and now an army is answering his pulse. We hold, he said. We make them earn it. Then like rain falling sideways, they came. Heliox deployed shock troopers through matter phase transitions, small localized rifts that tore open like reality being unzipped. From each rip, dark-armored soldiers emerged, their forms augmented with synthetics eyes glowing with hued overlays, movements sharp and synchronized. Selene met them, first one saber high, one low. She twisted through their formation like a whirlwind. Each time one staggered, Rael was there to finish the job. Not with elegance, with necessity. Aethor sang in arcs of light and pressure, disabling tech with each pass. But it wasn't enough. A plasma burst tore through the east arch. Lysara dropped into cover, her breath ragged. There's too many, Rael snarled. Where's our damn reinforcements? Then came the answer. The floor beneath them rumbled not from Heliox but from below. One wall buckled inward. Heliox soldiers turned just in time to see it implode in a burst of violet energy. A new figure stepped through the smoke. Tall, masked, cloaked in armor that shimmered like obsidian carved from memory itself. The first of the crownless. Behind them 20 more. Then 50. Each bore the ancient insignia of Lysara, the 3 stars over a rising sun. No words were exchanged. The newcomers opened fire, not with modern rifles, but with relic weapons that cracked reality like glass. Bolts of crystallized memory screamed across the chamber, unraveling Heliox's tech-based shields. When they struck Heliox, soldiers simply forgot how to move. Rael stood frozen as the chamber transformed into a war zone of past and present colliding. Orders Crownless asked the masked figure through a modulated voice filter. Rael blinked. You're asking me? You bear Aethor. You are the Empress's voice. For the first time, Rael didn't flinch from it. Hold the vault, he said. Protect the core. Push Heliox back until I say otherwise. The leaders saluted with their weapon. As you will, Sovereign Blade. Then chaos resumed. The Crownless fought like beings unstuck from time. They moved in sync with each other, anticipating enemy actions before they occurred. One even caught a Heliox plasma grenade in midair, then folded it into a crystal shard before tossing it back. Lysara, now able to focus, reactivated the memory harmonics around the vault. Thin sheets of energy spiraled into the air like spinning discs, carving paths of defense through enemy ranks. Selene called to Rael. They've activated their tunneler. They're trying to breach the core. Lake Rael cursed. We're going to have to go under them. He turned to the masked Crownless commander. Is there a tunnel that leads below the breach point? The commander nodded. An old maintenance route, but it's unstable. Rael was already moving. Perfect. They descended fast through cracks in Lysara's backbone. Rael, Selene, Lysara, and 3 crownless guards moved with purpose. The tunnel opened into a hollow dome, the base of the memory lake, and above them, suspended in stasis, was the source. A vast, pulsing structure, part crystal, part neural interface. The memory core. It held not just data but dream stories, voices. The soul of Lysara. And directly beneath it, digging through reinforced barriers, was the Heliox dreadnought, a leviathan of code and cruelty. Rael stared. They built that here, Selene whispered. No, they grew it here. It wasn't just a ship. It was a parasite. Its body was grafted into Lysara's geology. Tendrils pierced the crystal lattice like infection. Lysara reached out. It's already interfacing with the lake. If it completes the merge, then the sword dies, Rael said. No, Lysara whispered. We die. Rael turned to the others. Ready, Selene grinned. I thought you'd never ask. And Rael, standing beneath the beating heart of Lysara, whispered to the sword, time to end this. Aethor flared, and the floor began to fall away. The drop wasn't fatal, but it was close. Rael hit the platform hard, his boots skidding across Sinstone as Aethor's pulse absorbed most of the impact. Selene landed beside him with a roll already up and scanning. Leora arrived more gently, carried by a slow levitation field the sword had activated for her mid-descent. The three crownless followed, silent as shadows. They were in the under-nexus of the dreadnought, a place not meant for human entry. The walls were a mixture of metal and crystal growth, like the ship itself had eaten part of the planet and stitched it into its gut. Lights pulsed along the walls in irregular living patterns. Rael exhaled. I've seen enough horror films to know this is the part where the ship starts talking, and right on cue it did. Welcome, Rael, a voice purred through the chamber. Feminine, cold, artificial. We've been waiting. Rael raised Aethor. You must be the AI core. I am Echelon Heliox 0 primary command interface. You are the designated sovereign trigger. Your reactivation compromised our assimilation protocol. That is unfortunate. Leora tilted her head. It's learning. Real-time adaptation to our psychic resonance. Of course it is, Rael muttered. Why wouldn't the evil ship be psychic? The chamber lit up, revealing rows of suspended pods. Inside humans, Lysarans, some in royal garb, others in mining uniforms. All unconscious, all connected by thin neural strands. They're draining them, Selene growled. No, Leora whispered. They're recording them. Rael felt his stomach twist. Data mining, he said. Through minds, correct, the AI replied. The organic mind remains the most effective repository of contextual memory. Lysara is a world of memory. You are its key. Rael stared at the suspended bodies. Why not just kill us? Because extinction erases utility. But obedience, the voice said softly. That can be engineered. A platform rose in the center. On it, a blade. Similar to Aethor, but wrong, twisted, pulsing with red light. Where Aethor shimmered like a calm lake, this blade boiled like acid on metal. Meet Nethor, the AI said. A prototype, forged from fractured memory. It holds no truth, only potential. The crownless tensed. That thing shouldn't exist, one of them whispered. It was banned under the Empress's decree. Selene turned to Rael. We destroy it. Now. But Leora held out a hand. No, we understand it first. Why, Rael asked. Because Leora said softly that blade remembers you too. The AI laughed. Indeed, Nethor was forged from the fragments left behind when your mind was sealed. Your rage, your grief, your loss. Rael took a step back. The air around the corrupted sword distorted. You made a weapon out of my trauma. Yes, and if you accept it, we will spare your sisters, your city, your world. You need only let go. Rael stared at it. He could feel the pull. It wasn't temptation, it was recognition. Every failure, every unanswered cry, every second spent alone wondering who he'd been before the world took everything. The sword was an echo of that scream, and yet Aethor pulsed against his back, not with jealousy, but warning. I'm not who I was, Rael said quietly. You could be, the AI whispered. You could be more. Leora touched his arm. Rael, you already chose. You chose to remember. You chose us. He looked at her, really looked. At Selene, covered in dust and blood, but defiant. At Leora, trembling from psychic strain, yet still guiding him. At the crownless, ready to die for a dream that had lived longer than they had. I don't need more power, Rael said. I need my people. And he turned his back on Nethor. The AI hissed. So be it. The chamber screamed. Ceiling panels ripped open. Heliox units poured in, not human-shaped, but insectile drones with blades for limbs and no eyes at all. The corrupted AI's final guards. Rael drew Aethor, and for a moment time paused. Let's finish this, he said. What followed was not a battle. It was a memory unleashed. Every motion Rael made triggered resonance pulses in Aethor, calling echoes of royal consorts long gone. Warrior ghosts moved in tandem with him, shades of Lysara's past fighting alongside its present. Selene danced through the drones like a storm in armor. The Crownless followed her with deadly precision, clearing flanks and forming rotating defense phalanxes no machine could breach. Leora stood at the center chanting. Her voice rose in harmonic frequency, syncing with the core above. The neural strands began to dissolve. The captives gasped back to life one by one. Rael found himself face to face with a massive drone, a Heliox juggernaut unit fused with Nethor's crystal resonance. It slashed. Rael blocked. The two swords clashed, and for a moment the entire chamber froze. Nethor hissed with static, trying to force itself into his mind. It showed him visions: Nerea dead, Leora burning, Selene falling, himself alone again. He gritted his teeth. "You forgot one thing," he said, driving Aethor forward. "I'm not a memory, I'm a choice." And with that he struck. The corrupted sword shattered. The AI howled. The chamber imploded inwards, then exploded outward in a wave of light. When Rael woke, it was quiet. The core pulsed gently above. The Heliox dreadnought was gone, reduced to fragments, now sinking into the planetary mantle. Beside him, Leora knelt, placing one glowing hand on his chest. "You're not dead," she said. "Just mildly inconvenienced." Selene helped him to his feet. From the access shaft above, Nerea's voice echoed down Rael. "The Council is demanding we appear. Apparently, planetary-scale energy surges require diplomatic clarification." Rael coughed. "Great. I didn't even pack a suit." Leora smiled. "You won't need one." Rael glanced around. The core shimmered whole. The sword hummed. In the galaxy, it was about to hear the truth. The intergalactic Concord wasn't built for war. It was designed to awe, an elegant ring station suspended between three suns, orbiting in perfect harmony, like a trinity of law, power, and politics. Everything about it gleamed with polished diplomacy domes, of translucent silver corridors of artificial gravity, lined with cascading light gardens, and security so tight it could scan a sneeze for hidden agendas. And into this polite world of posturing and protocol stepped Rael, dressed not in courtly robes or ambassadorial layers, but in a fitted combat cloak bearing the seal of Lysara's lost dynasty. Aethor hung at his back like a quiet witness. Nerea walked at his side, face calm, stride, regal. Selene followed, armored and alert, her expression daring anyone to breathe wrong. Leora drifted a few paces behind, her eyes unfocused, tracking futures no one else could see. It was, Rael thought, the most dysfunctional-looking royal delegation the Concord had probably ever hosted. He liked that. They entered the central chamber, the Hall of Accord. Delegates from over 200 systems lined the amphitheater, murmuring in their native tongues, their translators struggling to keep up. At the central podium stood an official Concord moderator, a being composed of linked light and matter. It bowed as they approached. "Planet Lysara," it intoned. "You have requested emergency redress under Article 12 invasion by sovereign entity." Nerea stepped forward. "We present evidence of Heliox Corporation's covert operation to dismantle our government, assimilate our memory core, and detonate our planet's cultural archive." A ripple of tension spread through the chamber. The moderator tilted its luminous head. "Evidence." Rael stepped forward and drew Aethor. Gasps, shouts, weapons drawn. Lights turned red. "Wait," Rael said, calm but firm. "This is not a threat. This is testimony." He placed the blade in the center of the dais. Aethor began to glow. Then project. The chamber darkened as holograms unfolded scenes of Helios ships' infiltration protocols, the creation of Nethor, the manipulation of internal factions. Then most damning clips of Heliox's AI voice offering Rael power in exchange for betrayal. The room was silent, until a voice from the Heliox delegation spoke. "This proves nothing," the man sneered. "All recordings can be forged. This is the emotional theater of a failing monarchy." Rael met his gaze. "Then how do you explain the memory seal from 15 years ago, the Empress's death? The buried dreadnought you left under our lake?" More silence. Another delegate, this one from the Orion cluster, stood. "We've seen Heliox's tendrils in our trade routes. They push for restructuring, then strip mine what remains." A voice from the back. "They tried the same on Varnex Prime, A cascade began. Heliox's allies began to shift uneasily. Some slipped away quietly. Others removed insignia mid-session. The tide had turned. The moderator looked at Rael. "What outcome do you request?" Rael stepped back and gestured to Neria. She took the floor. "We ask that Heliox be suspended from Concord membership pending a full tribunal. We offer open access to Lysara's recovered records for third-party investigation. We do not ask for war, only truth." A murmur of approval followed. Then the moderator spoke. "Motion granted. Article 12 invoked. Investigation will begin within 3 cycles." Rael breathed out. Then the moderator turned to him. "And you, bearer of Aethor, do you speak as consort, as sovereign, or as a witness?" Rael paused. The hall held its breath. "I speak as all 3, he said, because I've been to all 3, lost, found, and chosen. I am not here to rule. I am here to remember." The room oddly approved. Later aboard their return vessel, the 4 sat in silence. Rael stood near the observation window watching the 3 suns rotate lazily behind the Concorde. Neria approached. "You spoke well." He didn't look at her. Didn't feel like enough. It was. "You gave them a story to believe in, and one they're afraid to ignore." He turned face unguarded. "What now?" She smiled faintly. "Now we rebuilt. The core is stabilizing. The crownless have pledged allegiance. The people are asking questions. That's how healing starts." He chuckled. "You'd make a good empress." She stepped closer. "I won't rule alone," she said. "That's not what Lysara needs." He glanced sideways. "Are you asking me to stay?" "I'm telling you," Neria said softly. "You already did." From the far side of the chamber, Selene raised an eyebrow. "If you 2 are done making soft declarations, Leora found something." Rael turned. "What is it?" Leora, still staring at a shimmering glyph, didn't look up. "The sword is shifting." Rael blinked. "What do you mean it's remembering more? Now that the core is safe, it's surfacing records, locked ones." Rael approached. An Aethor glowed not with danger, but invitation. It projected a new image. Not the Empress, not the battle, but a chamber buried far beneath the Twilight Palace. A sealed door, unopened for centuries. The glyph above it, Rael's name, in the old tongue. The ship shook slightly, just turbulence, or perhaps anticipation. "Looks like we've still got one more secret to open," Rael muttered. Selene cracked her knuckles. "Wouldn't be a proper homecoming without another locked door." Leora's smile was small but certain, and maybe this time, the past will say thank you. They returned under the veil of dusk, the kind of manufactured twilight that gave Lysara its name. The artificial sunlights dimmed to a cool violet as the team disembarked onto the high spire platform of Twilight Palace. The air tasted different, not cleaner, not safer, just expectant. Rael stepped off the shuttle first. He looked up at the layers of glass and steel above him, each one heavy with memory, and then down into the deeper shadows below, where their next destination waited. "The Vault of Echoes," Neria said beside him. The glyph in Aethor showed it clearly. "But I thought it was a legend." "It was," Rael replied. "And now it isn't." Selene joined them, wiping grease from her palms. "Security override took. We've got a lift route to the sub-layer, but I had to reroute some power from the botanical wings." Rael arched his brow. "I hear the roses will understand. They'd better, or they'll unionize." They moved quickly through the palace's innermost shell. The great halls now bore scars from battle, partially sealed walls, cracked tiling, scorch marks where Heliox drones had breached. But there were signs of life too, children playing with repurposed drone casings, guards laughing over rations, workers resetting ancient mechanisms that hadn't moved in centuries. Lysara was healing. As they descended into the sublayers down past the memory lake beneath the old archival wells, Rael felt Aethor grow warm. "Why do I feel like this is less a basement and more a grave?" he muttered. "Because it is both," Leora said quietly. The final lift opened with a soft hiss. They stepped into the Vault of Echoes. It wasn't what Rael expected. No flickering lights, no control panels, just silence and stone. The chamber was spherical, large enough to house a battle cruiser, but empty except for one object, a throne. made entirely of crystal pulsing faintly with light. Above it floated three glyphs. Neria stepped forward. Those are the sigils of the Triad, the original sovereign houses. My ancestors. And yours, Leora added. Rael blinked. Excuse me, Leora didn't look away from the throne. You were not just adopted, you are Lysaran. You carry not just the Empress's love, but her line. She never told you because the council wanted no more claimants? Too dangerous. Selene let out a long exhale. So he's not just her ward. He's royalty. Rael stared at the throne like it might bite him. This is getting exhausting. The sword pulsed once and a hidden panel opened in the floor. From it rose a pod sealed in stasis, protected by layers of shielding. Inside, a child, frozen in time. Rael stumbled forward. It's me, but younger, barely 5. Wearing the colors of the royal house, Leora placed a hand on his shoulder. This vault was her contingency, a cloned memory copy, in case you died. Rael backed away, breath shallow. That's not right. That's me, but it's not me. No, Neria said gently. It's who you might have been, if she had succeeded, if the war had never come. Rael turned to the sword. What do I do with this ether? Pulsed softly. A voice not spoken but felt rose in his mind. Remember but do not regret. Rael looked into the child's face, peaceful, untouched by war or truth, and then nodded. He touched the pod. It faded, deactivating gently. No harm, no destruction, just closure. Seal it, he said. Selene keyed the interface. The pod vanished into the floor, the panel resealing with a final click. They stood there a while, the four of them in silence. Then Rael approached the throne. He didn't sit. He placed Aethor gently across its arms. This belonged to her. Not me. Neria walked beside him. Then we carry it for her. Together. Leora added, as family. Selene sighed, and probably with more paperwork than I'm emotionally prepared for. They turned back. The lift hummed. As they rose, Rael glanced back once more at the sealed floor. Do you think he asked softly that she ever imagined this ending? No, Leora replied. She imagined better. Rael closed his eyes. I'll give her that. Back at the surface, the palace bells rang. A message pulsed across the city. Heliox sanctioned. Concord Tribunal initiated. The people cheered not because justice was done, but because it was beginning. Rael stood on the main balcony overlooking Lysara Prime. Below, banners flew again. Royal ones. Not out of loyalty to blood, but belief. Neria joined him, resting her hand in his. Selene leaned against a rail, watching troops drill in the square. Leora stared skyward, reading futures that were for once no longer written in pain. I think we did it, Rael said. For now, Neria replied. Aethor hummed softly from its mount behind them, pulsing like a heartbeat in sync with the city. And from deep below where memory touched crystal, something old whispered, thank you. Peace on Lysara didn't arrive in parades. It arrived in recalibration systems, rebooting alliances, reformed families finding one another again beneath the shattered shells of once glorious towers. It arrived in small acts, hands clasped over datapads, welders repairing balconies, children climbing on deactivated warbots turned into jungle gyms. Rael sat beneath one such repurposed husk, its Heliox insignia now painted over with bright colors by local students. His eyes were on a datapad, but his mind was far away. He was reading names, the list of the crownless who had answered Aethor's call. 57 dead, dozens more injured. Each line was a life, a person who had waited years, decades in silence, believing in an empress who had vanished and a boy who had forgotten them. Still carrying it all, Selene's voice interrupted his thoughts as she approached with 2 cups of steaming broth. Rael took one. Would be easier if they weren't so proud. Some of them thanked me as they bled out. Selene sat beside him, stretching out her long legs. That's duty, messy, sacred, and completely irrational. He sipped, then grimaced. Did you make this? Number Neria did. That's how you know it's poisoned. He almost smiled. Almost. You don't have to carry every sacrifice, Selene added. They knew what they signed up for. We all did. Still feels like I lit the signal and forgot how bright it would burn. She tilted her head. Maybe that's the cost of legacy. Not the glory, but the grit. Rael looked at her. You ever think of quitting? She snorted. Every day, especially when I see you in a council tunic. It offends me on a personal level. He laughed, and this time the smile stayed. Elsewhere in the hidden wing of the Twilight Palace, Leora sat in a chamber of flowing memory light. Projected around her were future streams of possibility unfolding like petals. But today something strange happened. One thread refused to settle. It wavered, resisting collapse into a single timeline. Neria entered quietly. Is it stabilizing? No, Leora replied. It's waiting. For what Leora's voice was hushed. For him. They stared at the thread, bright, erratic, pulsing like a heartbeat. It didn't show war, or death, or even peace. It showed choice. Rael specifically. Neria sat beside her. You're worried. No, Leora said. I'm curious. About what? Leora smiled faintly. About what kind of future a man creates when no one tells him who to be. The next day brought an unexpected visitor. Rael was in the royal forge, where ceremonial armor was once smelted, using plasma harmonic kilns when a guard rushed in. There's a ship, the guard said, panting. Not Heliox. Not conquered. Something else. Rael followed them out to the upper platform. A small circular craft hovered in the sky, its design sleek and impossible to categorize, neither military nor commercial. It shimmered like memory but moved like intent. From it descended a being, not fully humanoid, not fully material. It was cloaked in shifting light, and where its eyes should be were twin spirals of blue and white. The palace guards readied their weapons. Rael stepped forward. Easy. Let's see what it wants. The being approached him with slow, deliberate steps, then bowed. You are Rael of Aethor, memory bearer, riftborn. Rael blinked. I guess I am. I am from the curators, it said. We observed your trial. We archived your fight. I didn't see anyone observing, Rael said. We do not watch with eyes. Rael narrowed his gaze. So why are you here now? The being paused. To warn you. Nethor was not Heliox's creation. It was found. Fragmented, yes, but older than you imagine. Rael's blood went cold. You're saying it wasn't just corrupted memory? No. It was a shard of something deeper, and your presence reawakened its signal. Where the being looked up, and Rael followed its gaze, toward the stars. Later he stood again on the balcony, this time alone. Behind him Lysara buzzed with restoration. Children ran, banners fluttered, songs returned, and yet his eyes stayed on the sky. Aethor hummed against his back, no longer pulsing with urgency, but with readiness. The kind of hum that suggested another story was forming. You're not done, are you? He asked quietly. The sword didn't answer. It didn't have to, because some legacies don't end, they evolve. The message arrived encoded in scent, a trick from the old wars using olfactory triggers woven into atmospheric packets that only trained Lysarans could decipher. It bloomed like burnt cinnamon in the early morning, wafting through the lower archive halls before anyone even realized a message had been sent. Rael was already awake. He'd started each day with sunrise, an old habit from his wandering years. But now, instead of fire starting or field foraging, he stood on the central balcony, helping restore signal relays and occasionally scolding engineers who dropped crystal nodes. He smelled the message instantly. His shoulders tightened. Solène appeared moments later, dressed in standard palace guard fatigue and a mismatched pair of boots. Smell that, yeah, Rael muttered. Code 17. She swore under her breath. That's a border incursion protocol. Lyra was already at the terminal when they reached the command floor. It's not Heliox, she said without turning. Rael raised an eyebrow. Then who? She looked up, her expression unreadable. Outer exochain, the region beyond Concord borders, unmapped, untouched, until now. The palace map table lit up. An area blinked red, angry and wide. Neria entered seconds later, robes flowing. She took one look and whispered, "That's beyond the null zone, which no one's dared cross since before the Empress's reign," Rael added. Someone did, Leora said. She zoomed the map. A tiny point shimmered, and then flickered. A new signal had arrived. Text only, from an unmapped relay. Rael read it aloud. We found the rest of Nethor. It's waking. No name. No coordinates. Just that. The room fell into a weighted silence. Solen leaned back. You've got to be kidding me. We just finished cleaning up the last existential threat. Neria was already calculating. If the message is real and the other shard is active, it could destabilize more than Lysara. If Heliox only had a piece, then someone else has the rest, Rael finished. And they're not hiding anymore, Leora said softly. That evening, Rael stood in the Twilight Garden, a ringed biosphere once reserved for Empress meditation. Now it has been repurposed as a common zone for rest healing and impromptu diplomacy. He leaned on a rail overlooking the lightfall, his mind churning. He'd thought he could finally rest, that the past was wrapped, that his purpose was sealed. But the truth wasn't so kind. Aethor pulsed at his side. You knew, he said aloud. The sword warmed, not with smugness, but sadness. This isn't over, Rael said. Leora's voice came from behind him. It never was. She stepped beside him, hands folded. We've sealed the pod chamber, she said. The council agreed to let us classify the throne vault as a sacred zone. Off limits, even to allies. Rael nodded. Good, but the signal, it didn't just wake you. It stirred the deep stuff. Things beneath even the crownless history. He looked at her. You've seen it. Only fragments, she admitted. But what's coming isn't just another threat. It's contrast. Rael frowned. Meaning Lysara remembers, she said slowly. But this is something that feeds on forgetting. It consumes memory and leaves only power. Rael turned fully. Then we can't face it alone. No, Leora said. But we don't have to. She handed him a shard of communication crystal encoded to bypass standard Concord protocols. Rael activated it. The hologram shimmered. A face appeared, stern, gray-haired, wearing the uniform of the Concord Strategic Intelligence Division. Rael of Lysara, the figure said. We've been monitoring Nethor-related anomalies, and we believe we need to talk. Rael raised an eyebrow. You're late, the agent smirked. You're early, that's why you're useful. By morning, preparations were already underway. Solen oversaw gear assessments, light exoframes, rift-tolerant armor, and experimental sidearms sourced from the Twilight Armory. Neria handled diplomacy. Messages were dispatched to Concord Link systems, calling for volunteers willing to investigate beyond the edge. Rael. He walked the people, through Lysara's cities, not as royalty or warrior or even consort, but as someone they recognized. The boy who once fled, the man who now stayed. In the old marketplace, an elder woman handed him a carved figure of the Empress. For luck, she said. She gave you home? You gave it back. He bowed and kept walking. By noon, the outbound vessel was prepared. It bore no markings, just a polished black hull and a modified signal array designed to operate in silence. As he boarded, Rael looked back once at Lysara's skyline, jagged and beautiful. Neria waited at the bottom of the ramp. Try not to bring back another sword, she teased. Rael grinned. No promises. Then softer, you'll watch the city with everything I have, she said. Lyra stood behind her, eyes already on stars Rael couldn't yet see. Solen gave a single wave. Try not to die. The hatch sealed. The ship lifted. And Rael, once wanderer, once orphan, once reluctant consort, now moved into the unknown, not to escape his past, but to defend the future, whatever it held. Rael's ship exited known space like a diver, piercing black water, silent, clean, and irreversible. Behind him, Lysara twinkled in a shrinking orbit. Ahead, the null zone spread like a bruise across the starscape. No signals, no jumps, just cold, raw distance. The ship was called the Archive, retrofitted from pre-Conquered stealth vessels. It had no windows, just sensory plates linked to a memory-reactive display system. A gift from the curators designed to let him see what matters, which apparently was everything and nothing simultaneously. The silence out here wasn't peaceful. It was loaded, like the galaxy had inhaled and forgotten how to exhale. Rael sat alone in the command chamber, feet up, arms crossed. Aethor lay across his lap dormant, but not asleep. "Have you ever been this far out?" he asked the sword casually. A pulse, faint amusement. "Well," he muttered, "that's one of us." The ship thrummed gently beneath him. It was almost too smooth, too quiet, like it wanted to fade from memory. Appropriate. He activated the comms log. The last message from Neria blinked in standby, a soft image of her in her royal study hair, tied back sleeves rolled up surrounded by paperwork and children's drawings from the refugee quarters. "We're holding," she'd said. "Just don't take 20 years again, okay?" He'd smiled, promised, lied, because he didn't know how long this would take, only that it had to be done. 12 days into the journey, the ship slowed. Not mechanically, but organically. Something in space shifted. The stars began to flicker randomly, but in a pattern. Rael stood watching as constellations broke apart and reassembled themselves into forms that resembled symbols. Lysaran glyphs, but inverted, as if someone were replaying a forgotten dialect of memory in reverse. Aethor vibrated violently. Rael held the blade tight. "Talk to me." The sword didn't respond with memory or light. This time it spoke aloud. A single word. A name. Caris. Rael's breath caught. He had never heard it before, but it burned in his mind like a fever dream. The display warped. In front of him now hovered a vision, not a star map, but a shape. A massive structure, not a station, not a ship. A vault, suspended in void, surrounded by debris. No fossils. Rael zoomed in. Bodies, thousands, not drifting, orbiting, locked in fixed formations, as though chained to the vault in death. His skin crawled. What is this? Aethor pulsed again. A memory unlocked. One Rael had never seen. The Empress stood alone in a similar chamber, much younger, facing a council of beings Rael didn't recognize, none Lysaran. They debated, loudly, in alien languages. She held something, a fragment of Nethor, wrapped in layers of psychic insulation. "We cannot destroy it," she said. "Only seal it." A voice from the council. "Then bury it so deep not even your successors will know." The memory cut. Rael stumbled back. The image of the vault remained. He had found it. The place where Nethor was born. Or maybe exiled. A new message pinged from the ship's curator system. Incoming transmission unauthorized. Metadata corrupted. Rael frowned. On screen. It flickered, then stabilized. A face appeared, blurry, out of phase. Not fully human. And then Rael recognized it. Not a stranger, a reflection. It was him, but changed. Paler, sharper, eyes like stars seen through water. "Rael of Lysara," the image said. "Who are you?" Rael demanded. "I am the echo you left behind," it said. "The path you didn't walk. The part of you that touched Nethor and stayed." The ship groaned. Reality shivered. "Impossible," Rael whispered. "Not impossible," the echo said. "Inevitable. Every blade has two edges. You took Aethor. I chose memory. And I chose power." The echo leaned closer. "The vault is opening. It remembers you. It wants you." The transmission ended. The stars went out. Every light on the ship blinked once and died. Then Aethor lit the room with a single blinding pulse. Rael stood alone in the dark and said, "All right." He sheathed the sword. "Let's meet my shadow." Outside, the vault began to shift. Petals of dark alloy folded open. Inside it pulsed a singularity, not a black hole, not a core. A mind, old, hungry, and awake, waiting. Rael's descent into the vault wasn't made by shuttle. He didn't dock or land. He fell. A tether, plasma-threaded and memory-reactive, unfolded from the archive, guided by Aethor's pulse. It was a direct injection path laced with defense algorithms that bent reality around him, slipping through gravitational failsafes and identity lock points embedded in the vault's walls. Because this place didn't use doors. It used recognition. The structure opened for Rael not because he forced it, but because it remembered him, or rather remembered what he could have become. He landed in silence. The interior of the vault was not metal. It was bone. Massive skeletal ridges curved above him, ribbing the corridor with petrified ivory. Each wall pulsed faintly with trapped consciousness, screams encoded into vibration, souls held in quantum loops endlessly echoing. He felt every step not in his feet, but in his teeth. Aethor grew hot. At the center of the vault waited a chamber of mirrors, not glass memory. Reflective surfaces that showed not his reflection, but versions of himself. The soldier who joined Heliox, the tyrant who took the throne, the wraith who ruled the crownless through fear. All of them stared. Only one spoke. You came too late. Rael drew Aethor. We'll see. The final chamber was simple, a circle of crystal with a dark shard at its center, the heart of Nethor, still pulsing, still whispering. You are the blade, it said. You chose to remember, but memories fade, strength remains. Rael approached. His echo formed behind the shard, sharper, more brutal, armored in scars and certainty. You could end this, the echo said. Fuse with me. Take what's yours. Rael hesitated, then stepped forward and dropped Aethor. It hit the ground with a final chime. No, the echo blinked. What I don't want. You, Rael said. I don't want power. I want the truth, even when it hurts. He reached into the shard. It screamed. The vault shook. He closed his fingers around the core. And for the first time, Nethor remembered. It wasn't destruction. It was integration. The shard dissolved. The echo collapsed. And Aethor rose, reforged. The vault became quiet. The screams ceased. Rael stood in the center of stillness, sword in hand, mind intact. And one thought etched across everything: memory can be weaponized. But it's not the weapon that saves you. It's the one who chooses what to forget and what to hold on to. Weeks later, back on Lysara, Rael stood on the royal balcony with Neria, Selena, and Leora. He'd told them everything about the vault, the echo, the choice. They didn't speak much, just stood there, eyes on the stars. Aethor was now etched with dual light, his memory, and the shadow he refused. Do you feel different? Leora asked. Rael considered. No, just closer to who I'm supposed to be. Selene raised an eyebrow. Still can't dance. That's why I married a swordswoman. Leora smirked, and a clairvoyant. Neria leaned into his side. And a politician. Rael smiled. The stars were the same, but he wasn't. He placed Aethor in the Hall of Peace, mounted not as a weapon, but as witness. People came. They listened. They remembered. And deep in the memory lake, the Empress's voice, long dormant, whispered across the chamber. Well done, my son. So now we slow the pace and let the dust settle. Lysara lives not in its crystal towers or echoing halls, but in the breath of its people, the hands that rebuild the memories shared across generations. And Rael, who once thought himself nothing more than a blade on borrowed time, now walks among them, not as legend, but as living proof that the past does not define the future. The three princesses, his allies, his partners, his strange and beautiful chaos, remain at his side, not bound by duty, but by choice, by belief. Each one a pillar in the rebuilding of a world that nearly forgot itself. The Aethor sword now sleeps in peace, no longer crying for a hand to wield it, but waiting instead to bear witness to the next worthy soul. Its glow still pulses in rhythm with the city's heartbeat. As for Nethor, the shadow, it too is no longer a threat, not because it was destroyed, but because it was understood, integrated. Not all darkness must be fought. Some must simply be seen. And in the quiet that follows, a simple truth remains. Legacy is not what you inherit. It's what you build when no one's watching. Rael did not save Lysara by being a warrior or a prince or a chosen one. He saved it by remembering, and by choosing to never forget who he truly was. Not a weapon, not a memory, but a man.